Well, on May 11th, pro cyclist Mariah Mole Wilson was murdered in Austin, Texas. Police say Wilson was part of a lover's triangle, and Tryst member Caitlin Armstrong is the alleged killer. So, why on earth is the boyfriend acting like a victim? And are the U.S. Marshals closer to making an arrest? Hey everybody, welcome to Profiling Evil and this quick look into the Mo Wilson murder. Just a few days ago, the U.S. Marshals Service announced that the alleged killer of Mo, a woman named Caitlin Armstrong, sold her vehicle as part of her efforts to flee the area and, in their opinion, to avoid arrest and prosecution. Well, I joined News Nation host Marnie Hughes to talk about the case, but I wanted to take a moment first and look into what happened. It all began back on May 11th. It really began a lot earlier than that, and there's a lot of detail in this case that I'm leaving out, especially about the relationships that were going on and the problems that were occurring, comments that were being made, other issues surrounding the case in general. But back on May 11th, Austin police received a 911 call in East Austin. When they responded, they found pro cyclist Mo Wilson dying from a gunshot wound. Now, they immediately secured the crime scene and they started collecting evidence, including video surveillance. Within 24 hours, police questioned Caitlin Armstrong about the shooting because they discovered Armstrong knew Wilson, and there are some interesting twists in this one. Simply knowing her wasn't the real reason. You see, Armstrong's boyfriend, professional cyclist Colin Strickland, was also allegedly involved in the entire relationship, this tryst that was going on with the two women and with Strickland. Police brought Armstrong in because they discovered she had an outstanding misdemeanor arrest warrant. They used that warrant as an opportunity to interview Armstrong about her relationship with Wilson. Now, during the interview, police advised Armstrong that a video surveillance camera had caught a vehicle that looked mysteriously like her Jeep in the area at the time the murder happened. They said, "Hey, we think it's a match." Well, detectives said that Armstrong wouldn't confirm or deny being in the area, and she abruptly ended the interview. Now, closer examination of the warrant showed that there were actually clerical errors on the date of birth listed that caused police to release her. It's the right thing to do. I know it's frustrating a few of you out there, but it was all police could do because they couldn't risk the chance that they were arresting the wrong person on the warrant. Now, here's where things get interesting as we learn more about this case. The following day, Armstrong sold her Jeep Cherokee for $12,000. A day later, she jumps on an airplane at the Austin airport and flies over to Houston Hobby Airport. There, she changes airlines and flights and jumps on a flight to fly to Newark, New Jersey. Now, it's believed that Armstrong might have made her way up to Camp Haven Campground in Livingston Manor, New York. That's north of the airport that she believes to have gone to. Public reports suggest that Armstrong's sister works at that campground. Now, U.S. Marshals aren't confirming or denying that, but what we do know is that another report came in just a short time later that stated that Armstrong, a few days later, boarded a flight from Newark's Liberty Airport and flew over across to New York into LaGuardia Airport. And from there, this one slipped away and is now into anonymity. How? Holy cow. She probably had help. And you know what? She's showing an incredible amount of discipline, frankly. She deleted all of her social media accounts. And it doesn't appear that she's using credit cards. Now, we don't know that for sure because nobody's talking about it. It's one of the first places law enforcement's going to be looking, though. That alone would limit her ability to grab ride shares, for instance, that are app-based. But she certainly could pay for the cabs or buses or trains or public transportation using some of that 12 grand she recovered from getting rid of her car. Now, police haven't released if she's withdrawing any money from her bank account or if she did withdraw any money, but we do know she got $12,000 from selling her car. But that money's not going to last very long, folks, and eventually this police dragnet's going to tighten and Armstrong's going to get captured. Now, through all of this, the quiet one who has a lot to do with this case is Armstrong's boyfriend, Colin Strickland. He's remained pretty darn quiet. Often in a few interviews, one particularly overseas, where he hints that he's the victim in all of this and that he's really struggling emotionally. Now, some wonder if his struggle happens to center on his game of deception that he apparently was playing with the women. He told a British tabloid, The Sun, that he wasn't doing well. He's hoping therapy will help him. Why not, he said people ask him. He replies, drama and catastrophe. Well, some of that drama and catastrophe reportedly comes from the fact that Strickland had an on-again, off-again relationship with the victim in this case, Mo Wilson. All the while, he and Armstrong were a couple. Now, he says we're just business partners. Others say absolutely not. When Wilson showed up in Austin for a cycling event, this is what makes me think this relationship with Strickland and Armstrong is a lot tighter than anyone wants to talk about. When Wilson shows up, a woman that he had had a previous affair with that angered Armstrong, and there's social media testimony out there that a friend said that Armstrong reported she would kill Wilson for having relationships with Strickland. But nonetheless, Strickland reportedly snuck off to go swimming with Wilson, his former flame, and then they went on to dinner. Now, he did all of this on the sly, texting Armstrong that he was running errands, delivering flowers, doing the good deeds, and that his phone battery had died. Now keep in mind, Strickland condemns the Armstrong arrest affidavit by Austin police, suggesting that their relationships were much more overstated than they really are. I joined Marnie Hughes of News Nation to talk about the case, and in my opinion, talk about some of the developing facts, including that bombshell that we learned yesterday about Armstrong selling her vehicle just 2 days after the murder, all pieces and parts of this strategy to get out of Dodge. A few days later, she's on her way. Let's watch this clip.
Joining us to talk more about the case, forensic psychiatrist Carol Lieberman and retired police commander Mike King. Thank you both for joining us tonight. Good to see you. We've been following this case for weeks, and we haven't had a lot of information to go on. Mike, let's start with you. Finding Caitlin's car has to be a major development for investigators because now they know that she paid $12,000. She received a check, so they've got a trail to track on where she may have cashed that check and who saw her, right?
Absolutely. And as we look at these breadcrumbs, it's really going to help the investigators kind of understand some of the mindset. It's really important to consider the behavior in this case. There's a lot of stories on both sides that are coming out. But 2 days after she's selling her car, the following day, she's taking an airplane from Austin to Houston. She's jumping on a plane from Houston up to Newark into Liberty. And then she ends up at a camp north of Liberty Airport, makes her way back to the airport, and then flies over to LaGuardia. And so we're seeing all this movement and all of this this getting away from the area where the problem was. And we got to go back to that interview with law enforcement where there's some pretty powerful admissions in that interview. No confessions, but wow, are there powerful admissions there.
Right. Well, Marnie then asked me about law enforcement releasing Armstrong after the interview. Again, I know this has frustrated a lot of you out there in the true crime community who think she should have been arrested for murder at that point. Or at least you think she should have been detained on that outstanding arrest warrant, and that would be able to keep her in check? Well, let's watch my reaction to that question.
Mike, let's talk about that moment when police had Caitlin Armstrong in custody after the murder had happened. They questioned her and then they let her go. At this point, was that a major misstep that they weren't better surveilling her, given the fact that they didn't really have a suspect at that time, or maybe she was the suspect and they let her get out?
You know, I'm sure that the law enforcement folks had that gut that was telling them there's something really wrong here. But if you don't have what you need to hold her on the warrant, which it was a bad warrant with bad information, they got to let her go. And if they don't, and if they arrested her right on the spot and they don't have their case put together, they might put themselves in jeopardy of losing this whole thing. And so it's a real tricky game that you play when you're in those situations, especially when something inside of you is saying it's just not right. Should they have followed her? I guess we could speculate on that till the cows come home. But the bottom line is, I think they had a lot of great information coming in, probably could have put together the case pretty quickly. And we saw them get that affidavit out just in a matter of a couple of days saying, we believe she's responsible for the murder of this woman.
You know, there are really two important things to consider here, folks. The first circles around that arrest warrant and why she wasn't detained on the warrant. Now, it appears from media reports that the warrant had incomplete and incorrect information. Law enforcement can't risk placing the wrong person in jail. I mean, just trying to do things right, we make enough mistakes. But when there are questions on that warrant, namely around whether that warrant was the same person they were talking to, they had to err on the side of caution. Now, keep in mind, there were discrepancies in the date of birth, not to mention the warrant was just for a misdemeanor, a non-violent crime. It wasn't for something more weighty. The more important issue, in my opinion, though, was the risk that law enforcement would have taken if they had arrested Armstrong before they had their ducks in a row. They risk losing the whole case if they don't have sufficient evidence in place. I mean, think about what happened in the Suzanne Morphew case and the charges against her husband, Barry Morphew, for allegedly murdering Suzanne. They went to trial. There were challenges, and of course the defense and the prosecution both have differing opinions about what happened in those preliminary stages, but the state realized they didn't have their evidence. They weren't in a position where they could move forward with the case, and they dropped the charges. The question for all of us is, frankly, are the U.S. Marshals any closer to catching Caitlin Armstrong? Who knows? But I do know this. Caitlin Armstrong has successfully avoided detection for nearly 2 months. She's staying off social media grids. Now, if the marshals are closer to getting her, it's got to be because she's running out of money, or that those people that she's been confiding in and relying on are getting itchy and getting concerned. And frankly, they should be concerned, because harboring a fugitive can land them in jail too, and rightly so. So, where do you think Caitlin Armstrong's hanging out, folks? She made it as far as New York's LaGuardia Airport. Did she use a different identification and hop a plane and get out of the country? Or is she hiding in plain sight? Who's helping her? And how on earth is she paying the bills? Now, I'm going to be watching for your answers down below, and I want to invite each of you to read over each other's comments and make sure you're communicating with each other. I'm going to be looking over them and reacting as well. So thanks for putting them down below. And please hit that like and subscribe button and ring the bell so that you get all of our notifications on videos like this one. And folks, please consider sharing us with your network and your friends. I want to thank Marnie Hughes and News Nation for the chance to weigh in on this and other cases. And I hope you'll go over there and catch my entire interview. And if you're interested, think about our channel memberships. It's a great way to provide us a little financial support, something that we can continue to use to provide quality content like this. Now, my favorite, it's that Academy level. So you can learn more about Profiling Evil by listening to our podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget about our website at profilingevil.com. That's where you can sign up for our free digital newsletter, the B.O.L.O. Well, thanks for your support of Profiling Evil, and look for us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and here on YouTube. And until I see you again, I hope you're all going to be safe, and we'll see you soon at the next crime scene.